Hey there, it's Jennifer. I hope you have enjoyed week 3 of One Size Fits All, How to Wear the Parables. This week, one of the parables that we discussed was the parable of the vineyard. And this is one of my personal favorites because it just personifies grace to me. That's one reason. The second reason is I am a wine lover. I love the idea of just sitting in the cool of the courtyard of a vineyard and hearing this story that Jesus told, sharing about the people that were there, considering the product that they were making and all of that. I love it. I love to visit that environment. So I transport myself to that when I hear this particular parable. So in this parable, the owner of the vineyard had to gather some workers for the day. So in the morning, he had gone out, grabbed some workers, made an agreement of their daily wage, and brought them back to the vineyard, put them to work. As the day progressed, we learned that there were a few different times that he got other workers as well. At the end of the day, he paid every worker the same rate. Well, I'm sure you can imagine the ones that had been there all day were a little frustrated by the fact that they'd worked so much harder and longer than everybody else, but they had earned the same wage as everyone else. And that's where God's grace comes in. He had made an agreement with them and he kept his word that this is what I said I would give you. You've done the work, I've paid the wage. That's all that mattered. But what he was doing with the other workers really wasn't even their business. They weren't allowed to have an opinion in that way about how they were paid, how much, any of that. But we have a tendency to go there, don't we? We get frustrated that life's not fair. It's not fair for me to do more work than someone who earns the same amount. It's not fair when we see someone get unmerited blessing for something that they just didn't do. That's what grace is. That's what God does. None of what God has blessed us with is something that we have ever earned. When we really stop to consider that, we should just be thrilled and have huge praise for the fact that we get anything from him at all, that he favors us in any way, that he even knows our name, or that he even knew us before we even existed. That concept should be overwhelming to us, not the fact that, well, they got something that they didn't deserve. We all get something that we didn't deserve. The other thing I really want to explore just a little bit in this is the fact that they're in this vineyard. And the whole premise of being there is to harvest the grapes, crush them, and get them ready to be created into wine. Just that whole concept of what that is amazing to me. Because anytime we think of kind of going back to life's not fair, of things are difficult, or this isn't turning out the way I thought it would be, we're angry about it. We get mad with God. We become distant with God. Sometimes people just completely walk away from him. Instead of considering the fact that he's still God and he's still in the midst of all of it. And what if we actually even consider that he's doing something greater? When you think about that grape, first of all, back from the parable of the seed, this was grown from a tiny little thing with intention of what it could become. Then it's pulled up and it is crushed. It has to be crushed to be able to get the juice and to get the extract of what lives inside that grape. Because it's not just intended to be a grape that can be plucked off of the vine and gobbled up. It's intended to be wine. And that is a whole different process. It starts with a crushing. It starts with difficult scenarios and a hard path that sometimes we walk. But God's grace still meets us in that. He still has intention. He doesn't just stop there and say, well, that's how it goes. You just have to be okay with it. He knows the plans he has for us. He knows what he is going to produce in us. We just have to go through that process. So if you are at all a wine lover like I am, or can just appreciate all that that is, you know that it takes time and intention and diligence and patience to create something amazing that will end up blessing so many people. That's what God does in us. That is so his plan, his heart, his purpose in all that we go through. So the times that things seem a little unfair, that someone gets something more than we feel they deserve, well, God's doing something in them too, and we don't know what that process is going to produce. All we have to do is trust the vineyard, trust the winemaker, that he has an amazing plan for us. Be blessed.